Hello, leaders. This is Dr. Shantae Scroggins welcoming you to season 4. If you're listening, you cannot see me waving my hands, but I'm very excited. Uh, and we are here today with the author of Turn the Ship Around. Everybody, you already know how we do this. You buy two, one for you and one for someone else because we do not share. Okay, we make our notes in the margins and we do not share. But I want you all to hear from Captain David Marquet. Y'all, this book is everything we didn't know we needed. I'm telling you, you need this book because there are so many lessons, not just on leadership, but there is a roadmap in this book. There is a schematic, there is a strategy for how to move people from what Captain Marquet calls know it all. Yeah, like the tell me what to do leaders, like moving from tell me what to do to emancipating. There's this wonderful part in there about empowerment to emancipation that I hope we get to. But I want you all to welcome the one, the only, the author of Turn the Ship Around, a true story of turning followers into leaders, the Captain David Marquet. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
Well, I thank you. That's an effusive introduction, and I appreciate that. And I saw that you had all the little dog ears and tabs in your book, and that just makes my heart soar with joy when I see things like that. So
Yes.
thank you for that. If you look at my books, I had kind of like no one borrows books from me anymore because they're all written over and scribbled on. And I love the idea. You got to buy two, one for you, one for a friend.
We share in this
Yeah,
community. We share and
I
we
love
make
it.
our own notes. Books are personal, books are
Yeah,
sacred.
yeah.
I want
We call it my book for a reason.
that part. So I want to start with a very clear distinction you make in the introduction. And this is, I have the 2012 printing. So
Early on,
yeah.
early days.
So this is what, page 24, 25 in the intro. People who are treated as followers have the expectations of followers and act like followers. And just opposite on the next page is something that kind of squashes the age old debate of leader born or leader made. At its core is the belief that we can all be leaders. And in fact, it's best when we all are leaders. Y'all, this is the introduction, and this is where I fell in love with the book. There's so many more pages after this, but this is where I fell in love with the book. Will you please speak a little to the distinction between leaders and followers?
Yeah, thanks so much. I came up in the Navy, and I was a submarine commander at one point, and I was really frustrated when I was in positions of leadership. I would be frustrated because I felt like I was the only one thinking. Of course, it wasn't true, but I felt like that. And then I would run around and tell people what to do. And my mindset was, oh, well, if you guys would ever come up with an idea on your own, ever show some initiative on your own, then I wouldn't have to run around and tell you guys what to do all day long. And and I realized that that was totally backwards. Is that my behavior of running around and telling them what to do was what squashed their initiative. And what I needed to do was to actually lean back and give them some space, because if the boss comes in and says, "Hey, I really think this is a great product, and we got to catch up with the other company, and we've done a bunch of testing, and we already got certification, blah blah blah. So, what do you guys think?" Well, no one who wants to keep their job is going to raise their hand and say, "No, I actually think there's a problem with the product." This is kind of what happens in corporations. It happens like with 737 Max, where test pilots knew there was a problem, and and then we blame them and say, "Oh, well, you didn't speak up. You didn't. You need the courage to speak up." Well, look, it's the leader's responsibility. They create a culture where it's hard to speak up, and then
Yeah.
we blame people. So I was just my I think most people try to do. If you give them a test, they would recognize that a lot of the behaviors that they have are not actually helpful. But just in the moment, we forget. We go back to old programming, and we act bossy in a way that's just not helpful. And toxic leadership, a few of those people are evil, true, but most of them are just acting the way they're acting because that's just the way we always act. We're programmed like that. And it's not about evil people, it's about people actually trying to do the right thing. They don't have the language for it. So that was my, um, and I didn't like it as a follower when people were telling me what to do, and I would raise my hand. Oh, I got an idea. No, 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 no. If we wanted to hear what you thought, we'd tell you. We, you know how you know how it is. That's how it is in the military. So we gotta fix all that. We gotta change all that.
I
We gotta
love
let people think.
I love that. And because that carries over. One of the things that I thought about while reading your book was my father's experience in the military. My father is a Vietnam vet from the Army. And my father is the toe the line rule follower. Daddy, did you ever have any ideas? Didn't need ideas. We were in
Yeah, 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 yeah. I was told all the ideas I needed.
And so it makes me think because my father just turned 80, and so he's from the traditionalist generation. I'm
Yeah.
at the tail end of Gen X, and so I love to hear these bridged stories of experiences that take us on a trip. I noticed in one of your YouTube talks that you mentioned sharing power, and it took me to servant leadership and how an element of servant leadership is stewardship, which is essentially power sharing. Were you inspired at all by servant leadership or any other leader models?
Yeah, I was inspired by a lot. I was inspired, in particular, Dr. Covey's Seven Habits had a big influence on me. And listeners out there, if you haven't read this book, it's a classic for a reason, and it had a huge impact on me. Servant leadership, I only knew enough, heard enough about it to be dangerous. I like the concept, but I saw it interpreted almost as sacrificial leadership in a way, which she's waving her hands in the air right now.
Talking, you're speaking my mind. Y'all, I
Is that
found
right?
my leadership spirit animal. It's you,
So
Captain.
go ahead. What's
Please.
on your mind? Y'all were having such a good time here. Tell me what's on your mind.
No, you go ahead. I'm just
No,
identifying.
no, no. Well, so look, um, I think the job of the leader is to help people live their best lives, be their best selves, based on what they want to do. Key, not what I want you to do. And I made that mistake. And that means creating an environment where people can be at their best. I firmly believe people don't need to be empowered. That comes from within. I don't empower you. That's ridiculous. Uh, People like solving problems. People like using their brains. I remember when I lived in Manhattan for a couple of years. You get on the subway, everyone's playing like games and stuff. They're on their phones, like they're solving problems for free. And then we go to work and we think, oh no, I need to tell people what to do because they are not like, this is craziness. So that's what leaders need to do. Leaders, the act of love in leadership
Mm,
means working to create the environment so you can be your best. Now, every once in a while, this means, hey, you know what? That's going to be someplace not here. And that's better for you. It's better for me. It's better for the organization, whatever. And usually people smile and when, oh, finally someone figured that out, they can help me. But I worked hard for everybody. I don't, people say, well, oh, here's one of my pet peeves. Well, we have a high potentials program. I'm like, oh, well, what percentage of people in the organization are high potential? Oh, it's very elite, 2%. This is a big oil company. I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty good for the 2%, but what about the 98% of your company? I guess they're low potential. Oh, no, we're not saying that. I'm like, yeah, you actually kind of are saying that.
yeah.
So the problem is you don't know. Isaac Newton, who was one of the greatest thinkers ever in humanity in terms of understanding, helping our understanding of the physical world around us. No one would have ever bet on him. His father died before he was born. He grew up penniless. His mother remarried, but they didn't want him around when he was 3, so they shipped him off someplace else. Blah 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 blah. And he's sort of this weird, geeky, introverted kid who like played with his books and studied Latin in the 1600s, and he figured out how nature and gravity and things like that work that deluded us, and no one would have ever bet on him. You don't know. You don't know. And even if so, there's a business reason to listen to everybody, but I think there's an ethical reason as well. Obviously, each person should be listened to and respected. I'm not saying everybody's right all the time, but you don't know that until you've actually heard them and acted with curiosity. It's always the ideas. I used to, when people would say things to me that sounded weird or different or something, like I see top 10 places to visit in Europe, and I'm like 1, 2, 3. Oh yeah. I never heard of that place. Oh, that must be. And you sort of react to those strange things as that's weird or it's wrong. Now I try to really seek into that because that could be those new things, the things I haven't heard about. That's where I'm learning. That could be the new innovation. That could be the next undiscovered place. I don't know, but even now, after I practice this, my initial reaction is always, I hate to admit it, but it's always sort of, oh, that's weird. Oh, that's wrong. And then I'm getting pretty good at sort of swallowing that before it comes out, and then go, oh, tell us more about that. That's interesting. Yeah. And then really trying to get my head in a place where I can accept those ideas, even if they're different from maybe what I thought before.
That's such a powerful thing you said. Leaders don't miss that we continue to grow in our leadership. As we sit here and talk, I'm talking to a man with years and years of experience who says, I still have to monitor my default. And so that's encouraging that we continue to grow. And I love that you said, I'm getting better at catching it before I say it. I'm usually like,
yeah. Hey, welcome to the human race.
And so it makes me think of a point you made about thinking out loud and the informal communication. You made a statement. Let me turn. It's page 103, y'all. Let's see. About adding informal communication and how thinking out loud creates a much more resilient system. Mm-hmm. Will you speak to that, please?
Yeah, I don't know about you guys, but I always have all this kind of chatter going on in my brain. I'm thinking this or that, or well, maybe this, but this could go wrong, and what should we do about that? And I realized that when I was the submarine commander, I had a lot of rationale, reasons, and rational thinking. I had sort of when things would come out of my mouth, they tend to be just the tip of the iceberg. And there was this whole iceberg of thinking and thought process. And I was always looking. One of the things I was pretty good at was kind of looking 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps ahead. So like in a chess game, I could just kind of see further in the distance. Part of the reason was because I divested myself of trying to do everybody else's job.
Yeah.
So I would go, so what do you guys think about this? Now I'd already gone like 4, 5, 6 steps, and then they would be like, what? And I didn't realize that we had kind of talked through that. I had this experience when my daughter was learning how to drive, where we're in the car and she's driving for one of the first times, and I'm sitting over there and I'm kind of nervous and holding tightly onto the dashboard, and I'm like, hey, Emily, do you see the family? And do you see the car coming? Do you see that? And she's like getting irritated. Yes, I said, but it's silent in the car. I said, why don't you just tell me when you see things? Oh, she says, like, Dad, you're gonna make me sound like an idiot. It's like, humor me. It'll be good for me and you. So it's not like, oh. So she just started saying what she saw. You see a car coming towards us, we're going to stay on but if for some reason it starts, I'm aware of it. If he starts drifting across the lane, I'm ready to stop, pull off to the side. I see the family playing in the driveway. And it's just, just started doing this. Mm-hmm. My stress level went way down. And then I shut up. And so her stress level went way down too. It's this level of this transparency actually earns you more autonomy. Wow. Your boss can be quiet now. And when we do our normal thing, which is, oh, trust me, don't you think I know how to drive? You're doing the opposite. It's having the opposite effect of what you want. Now it's like, no. By the way, whenever you say, just trust me, don't give me the evidence, then it makes me actually more nervous. And so I'm going to come down to your desk twice a day and stand behind you and look what's on your feet. So anyway, the idea is you got a lot in your head. And whether you're from the leader side or on the team side, just share more of that. Now, I'm a natural born introvert. And so this was an unnatural behavior for me. And she's raising her hand. And so I kind of had to learn. And so some of the sentence starters were things like, so what I'm worried about, so what I think might happen. So the probability, I always like to use probabilities. I was a physics major and studied quantum mechanics. It's all about probability. Nothing's 100%. And then, so I think the probability, so when I would be sharing these things, the likelihood that the enemy's over there is pretty high, but that might be a spoof and it could actually be in the other direction. So, and speaking of the probabilities, actually gave me more freedom and permission to say things that I'm not 100% sure, so I'll just keep my mouth shut. But you say, oh yeah, no, I think this might happen. I'm 60% sure it could rain. Doesn't rain. Hey, I wasn't wrong. 40% chance it would. The weathermen have figured this out.
I love that. That I think is a good place to talk about empowerment versus emancipation. Are you laughing? Don't laugh.
Yeah. Hey, so I know you've been in one of these meetings where the boss comes out and says, frustrated from all the normal reasons, like, I hereby empower everybody. So, which annoyed me because I never really felt any different, and I'd be the annoying person because I couldn't read the room. Seems like actually you have the power because it took you to empower us. So if you could empower us, sounds like you could unempower us, which means we really don't have power. Yep. They always look at me like, why are you annoying me with these questions? And first of all, there's a fundamental hypocrisy to me that I should have some sort of ability to inject power into other people. That seemed like to me an innate human attribute that doesn't require somebody else to activate. Number two, I think it is legitimate to say maybe we can help you with the words or the voice for you to live out your empowerment. I never needed anyone to say, well, I hereby empower you. I'm going to do my thing. I'm going to do my best I can at whatever it is. I don't need someone else rooting me on, from the sidelines. It doesn't make a difference to me. So, and then the third thing is when they say you're empowered, it's undefined. Like, well, what does that really mean? How do our conversations change if I acted in an empowered way versus whatever way bad way I was acting before?
Right.
So we tend to avoid that, and we just say, and next time you come and talk to me, I'm going to invite you to the level of what we call I intend to. So if you say, hey, tell me what you see, tell me what you think, tell me what you intend to do, tell me what you see, tell me what you think. Hey, here's what I see, here's the situation, here's what I think's going on, here's what I intend to do. And you can ask questions, you can veto it, but if you don't say anything, I'm doing it.
Yeah. There's a statement you made, and my note at the end of the chapter is called A New Method of Resupplying. And at the end of this chapter, my note in the book was, this chapter was so worth the wait. Uh, and here's what it says: emancipation results when teams have been given decision making control and have the additional characteristics of competence and clarity. You know you have an emancipated team when you no longer need to empower them. Drop the mic. This is this is such a great statement, and this is a perspective shifter for me. And leaders, I hope you're twirling this around now, that because empowerment is trendy. It's the thing we say, it's the thing we draw in, and we're going to empower you. It's an empowerment seminar, it's an empowerment workshop. But have we freed you? You know, have we freed you to use your own capability? I thought this part was, it wrapped everything up so nicely for me. Those listeners, I'm intentionally not giving you what is in the middle. Because you need to read this book. I'm telling you, I felt like I reached out to my doctoral program and was like, we need to add this to the list because there's so much in it. I felt like I was in a class, and the play by play and the sequence of events, it was like being on the journey with you. And I appreciated that in reading this book. What I haven't asked you is, why'd you write it? You could have kept it to yourself. I mean, it could have stayed within the confines of the Navy, but why did you write it?
So I had this wonderful experience on the submarine, where which is the story in Ship Around. And I saw what happened when we released the team from the fetters of do what you're told, blah, 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 blah. The explosion of thinking, of passion, of good feelings, of a sense of self-worth. And I had a couple more jobs in the fleet, and then I went to the Pentagon, where even though I was pretty senior at that point, I was just a small fish in the Pentagon. And it wasn't like that at all. It was do what you're told, have a fake meeting to plan the real meeting, which was then also a fake meeting. You know, those when I say fake meetings, we already know the decision's been made. We were, at the time I was in the Pentagon, we were deciding whether to invade Iraq the first time, but it was all BS because we all knew that the President and Secretary of Defense had already decided, and we were just supposed to muster the evidence and get ready to do it. But we had to do this window dressing, which I hypocritically, I think it's just so leaders to say later, oh, well, you know, you had a chance to weigh in, but not really. And it was very frustrating. And it wasn't just that, but it's like the whole environment. It was, you want to talk about toxic? I developed medical conditions. My body was falling apart. My life expectancy in 2008 was 7 years.
Wow.
Because I was so broken down, and I had to get out. And for my health, for my sanity, for my family, for my relationship with my wife. And after I got out, a year went by, and I was getting healthier again. And I got a phone call from one of my officers from the Santa Fe, and by now it had been 10 years. And he had been one of the junior officers that kind of arrived 6 to 9 months before I left. And he said, oh, I just got selected to be submarine commander. Thank you very much for setting me on the right path right from the get-go. So this has been like, he'd gone through like 4 different jobs in the meantime. And I said, well, thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you for the phone call. It warms my heart, makes me feel good. And then he said, and by the way, I'm the 10th one. I'm like, what? I said, yeah, I'm the 10th officer from that group on the Santa Fe.
Whoa.
Who's been made a submarine captain. And I said, because I knew, because through time, but I had like, whoa. And it was that 10 number. There's not that many off. There's only 15 in the wardroom. And then I went look, and he was right. And then my wife told me that's the book you're going to write because there's too many leadership books that are all about me. And I put like, well, I was great. I told them what to do. I was right. I made the good decisions because it's a traditional model. And then I put my picture in the front. And I wanted to write a different book, one that was truly about the team. And it was about creating this environment where you make more leaders, which we now had the evidence that that's what we had. Great wins in the short run. We got the highest score in the history of the Navy. We had 100% retention for the next 12 months. We had all those wonderful things happen in the short run, which the Navy recognized.
Mm-hmm.
The Navy didn't understand. They don't keep records like this. So if most organizations don't, so they don't know who in the organization is creating the next generation of leaders and the next generation after that. And should we value that? I watched Top Gun 2 recently. I don't know if you saw that.
Not yet.
Yeah. Okay. So, but for all you listeners, so Tom Cruise comes back, but he's now an instructor. Right? He's the same age I am, so he's now an instructor. And in society, we just don't value that role, even though that's so important. He's the person behind the scenes going to train the team to go out and do this next mission. But there has to be some artifact in the movie where now he has to actually go on the mission and lead it. Why? Because he's the star, and we can't have a movie where the star plays the supporting role. Mm. And this is just a societal problem. Mm. This captures why we don't pay teachers enough, why we don't value people who make it great for other people. But I think that's really where the win is. It's the win for you. It's the win for them. It's the win for the world. But it's also a win for you. I'm not hiding from the fact. Probably the person who benefited most from this whole thing was me. But we have now two of the officers are admirals and on and on. So
wow.
Yeah, but it's great, and I benefit too. So it's not I benefit at the expense of you, or I sacrifice myself for you. It's by working together, we're going to make it better for everybody.
Oh, I knew this was going to be a good story. I just knew it because it's what I am attempting to do with leadership. Point leaders toward the legacy, which is in the people, and what people are able to do with our work and with our lessons. Wow. Okay, I don't even want to ruin this by asking you anything else, but our last question.
Yeah, well, let me just go back on that for a second, which is I use the word achievement or accomplishment. Like if I'm sitting in a chair as the CEO for a couple of years, and we sell this, make this much money, whatever, that's an achievement. Mm-hmm. When I retire and my company continues to go on, my submarine, my company, my NGO, my chair, whatever it is, goes on. The people go on. They're great without me. That's leadership. I really think your leadership scorecard starts the day you leave.
That's so good.
Not the day you show up.
That's so good. Okay, I don't even think I need to ask my last question. You pretty much just answered it. I was going to
want me to steal all your thunder. There was a lot of fun.
No, this that you have. I knew this was going to be great, and it has been, because the last question was going to be some final words for leaders. But don't say anything. You just said it, unless you have something inspiring.
No.
One of the things I love that you didn't call yourself this in the book, and you didn't call yourself this in the YouTube talk in one of them, but you called this an experiment in organizational design. And I was going to introduce you as an organizational design strategist, because I just think that's what it was, this full-on plan. And it doesn't look like you set out for a qualitative study or to prove some point. It was, I want to make the change where I am.
Yeah.
and watch how this does. I am so glad you made time to speak with us, and I hope it's been worth your time. Uh, but thank you for telling us a little bit more about this book, y'all.
You're blocking your face.
I'm beating a dead horse here. I'm just gonna just show it to you, so you all know what to do. Yes, okay. And everyone listening, this is "Turn the Ship Around: A True Story of Turning Followers into Leaders." David Marquet, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on your show.
All right, leaders. Until we are together again, lead well and read well.